right, call the meeting to order at 7:01. We'll do a roll call. I'm here as chair. Mayor Montgomery, Commissioner Castaneda, and Commissioner Lally are absent. Commissioner Bussing? Here. Commissioner Marino?
Present.
Commissioner Wong, not here at the moment. I will take a motion for, well, you guys got to do a lot of heavy lifting today, by the way. It's only two. Just so you know. I will take a motion for approval of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will have brief announcements from staff, commissioners, and council liaisons.
I don't have any
Okay.
for you tonight.
Okay. I have nothing. Commissioners, any brief announcements?
None.
Public comment. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission on matters which are not listed on this agenda or are listed on the consent calendar, which there's only one our June minutes. In-person public comments, speakers will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Speakers shall be asked to state their name for the record. Do we have any public comment? Come forth.
My name is Hiram Jackson. I happen to be on the school board, but I'm actually here speaking in favor of a ballot that the county has put on the November ballot, which is Measure T. It's to finance the operations of an additional branch that will be in South Davis. It's been about 17 years since there was a similar kind of library parcel tax that was passed mainly to fund the activities of the Mary Stevens branch, and we actually are honored to have Mary Stevens, the namesake of that branch, here with us today. But there will be a new branch that is already fully funded from county funds, from state funds, federal funds, the city, that is started to break ground, I think next year. So this is just mainly to finance the operations of that library. If it doesn't pass, then a likely scenario is that the current funds that support the main library right now would be split with both sides. We'd have reduced hours and potentially reduced services. And I just remind you that our public libraries are available as a resource for everyone in the community. It's in the summertime, it's a cool place to go. If your internet connection it goes out where you have to be, you can go to the library and get connected. You can get ebooks, you can look at newspapers and print periodicals, and potentially save yourself on subscriptions. You can check out books, of course. All of this, think about the cost that you might have to serve yourself in those services, and it's I think you'd find that you'd be saving yourselves money, even with the $49 cost that will be assessed if it passes. So this is Measure T. It's on the November 5th ballot. I'm here because all of you, I'm sure, are active members in the community, and I'm sure probably all of you likely are voters, and I hope you'll support Measure T. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you say the library is a cool place, I take it you mean both figuratively and literally.
Oh, absolutely. Just an economy of words to mean multiple things.
I look forward to, at the future commission, reviewing the library's historic state in 50 years. Thank you for sharing.
May we all be
I'll
around.
be here.
The commission as a body, not so much us. We have terms. Okay, thank you. Consent calendar, we have the June 17th minutes. We can approve those with a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Regular items, museum reports. Marilee, yes?
Oh, for the museum report?
Yes, review.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, since our last report, we've updated our Davis Olympians exhibit by adding information about 2 athletes with Davis connections. Nyjah Houston, who competed in skateboarding, this was his second Olympics, and this time he won a bronze medal. And Fiona O'Keefe, who competed in the women's marathon for the first time. We also recently completed a new exhibit, UCD's Beginnings, the University Farm, for the County Fair Museum. And if you don't know about this, this is a small museum located on the county fairgrounds. Photos from 1907 through the 20s show the farm under construction, completed first buildings, and several early picnic day celebrations. Objects such as a burlap seed bag, an ice milk bar wrapper, the cover of a 1921 yearbook adorned by a bucking bronco with the UFC brand, and a trophy awarded to the Davis Chamber of Commerce for the best picnic day float have attracted much interest. The museum was open last Wednesday through Sunday, the time of the fair, obviously, for fair visitors, and exhibits can also be seen in connection with various fairground events throughout the year. In mid-July, we welcomed 16 9- and 10-year-olds from the Davis Peregrine School's summer camp program and their teachers. Their project was a video of Davis history, which they plan to make. Groups worked on the Patwin, Davis pioneers, the founding of the city of Davis, and what Davis was like 50 years ago. We enjoyed interacting with this group and answering their questions. They took many photos and promised to bring us a copy of the video when they've completed it. We're very happy to report that the number of campers next to the WPA building remains under control, largely due to the intervention of our liaison with the police department. We are, however, concerned about the grounds around the museum building and the WPA building. We don't believe that watering or maintenance of plants is occurring. For example, the Japanese yews in front of the building appear to be dying. Also, the incense cedar just to the right of the building, when facing the front, looks very unhealthy. If this large tree falls into the museum, it could cause very serious damage. The rose garden in front of the WPA building looks healthy, but the roses need to be dead-headed and pruned. And the redwood trees near the WPA building have many new sprouts near the ground, which need to be removed. We're still very interested in obtaining a plaque for the WPA building and hope that the commission can give us advice about going about this. Recent visitor counts are 10 on July 6th, 20 on July 13th, 33 on July 20th, 57 on July 27th, 26 on August 3rd, 60 on August 10th, and 50 on August 17th.
Okay, thank you. I look forward to that video as well for the summer camp. What a fun activity. I would have loved that as a kid, clearly, because I'm sitting here. So you've asked our advice on the WPA plaque. There isn't already something on the building?
No.
Okay.
It came before this commission a number, probably 10 years ago, and it was not declared a historic resource. Since then, however, a lot more information about it has been uncovered, and it may be the only WPA building in Davis. I don't know if you have other information about that. And it was built as the restroom building for the park, and the park was constructed largely by the WPA, and including that building. It does have a WPA plaque on one side of the building.
It does have a plaque.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you know, the plaque that the WPA put on the wall,
Okay.
but nothing
You
that,
want a bigger, more
well,
descriptive
something
type
at
thing.
ground level too that people
Yeah.
can
Okay.
read about, yeah.
Well, sometimes we're allowed to ask the city for money, but not very successfully. And sometimes we, through the certified local government, there's some grants from the state. We may have just missed the grant cycle, but I will review my emails and look and see what the eligible uses are. I don't recall, we used some a couple, maybe 4 years ago, to help do some design guidelines for College Park as a historic district, still pending, Eric. So I will check back in with you on that. I will
Okay, thank you very much.
look through my emails. But pass to the city commissioner.
Can we send a letter to the appropriate department of the city asking them to review the condition of the plantings and their watering schedule to see if it can be done to save those funds?
I'll make a note of it and sort of contact Parks about it. and
You might
see
have
what's
like a
going
better
on.
connection, but if you'd like us to send some sort of collective
Okay.
letter, I would be in favor of that as well.
I don't think it's needed, but we'll
Okay.
contact them and let them know about the concerns. Thank
Yes,
you.
if you don't cut back those redwood sprouts, they grow into trees.
Right. Right, that's what we are afraid of.
Although redwood trees that are in more than one in a planting are very solid and secure, have a good root system. So it's the solar redwood tree you have to watch out for.
And then Marilee, do you have a copy of that, or can you email me a copy of your?
Yes, I do have a copy. I'll give it to you before I leave.
All right, moving on to item B. Davis Community Church Admin Office Building Windows at 412 C Street, planning application number 24-42 for certificate of appropriateness. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I just have a brief sort of presentation on it. And as I noted in the report here, what we're really asking tonight is for the commission to confirm that we can process it administratively. So, as you know, the Davis Community Church is a city landmark, but that really applies to the sanctuary building, the historic building. There are numerous other buildings on the site which were added or built later, notably the educational building, which had modifications about 10 years ago, and then this administrative office building, which faces the Annie Weber Museum, so it's the closest building there to the park. And then behind that is the Fellowship Hall, Phoenix Hall, which had that second story addition of the addition built, I think in the 80s, 90s really. And then some other buildings on the site. But what the applicant is asking for with this certificate of appropriateness, because it is a designated landmark, is to replace the windows on the east and the south sides of the administrative office building. Staff is able to process some of these COAs administratively, but we just want to confirm if the commission is okay to do in this case. So, as noted in the report, the information from the applicant, they describe the changes that are proposed, primarily to upgrade the windows for efficiency, security, things like that. The windows themselves date back to when the building was built in 1960, and the new ones will match the ones in the Phoenix Hall building behind it.
The Phoenix Hall is not the
Phoenix-
historic part.
Right.
Okay,
That's
just
an
confirming
addition,
that's
yes.
my
Even though it's an
understanding,
addition
yes.
to the historic building.
Right.
But that went through definitely a pretty long process when that occurred. And so currently, you can see the pictures that were provided on the existing windows on the administrative office building. They do have like grid pattern to them, which is kind of interesting, but doesn't match the ones on the sanctuary building anyway. There's a number of different window types that are on the main historic building portion of it. But so this would be a change to the office building, but it would match the newer addition, and also help differentiate this building from the historic building. So again, we're not asking for a formal action, but we do want to get confirmation that it's okay to process it administratively. And when we do that, it'll be a notice that goes out to the surrounding properties about the proposal for a 10-day comment period. And if there's no comments or no issues, staff would approve that administratively, and that will allow the church to move forward with this project. So I think that just sums up what the words that are the comments I wanted to make, and the applicant is here. They may add something, or if you have any questions for them, I think they're happy to answer questions too.
Do you have any prepared remarks? Nope, okay, that's fine.
That's a very thorough step.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
I'm second to none in the admiration of a property owner wanting to upgrade their windows. However, I am concerned that they're not choosing a window that has grills or mullions, as you would say. They're not that expensive. They don't have to match the original precisely, because you probably can't get them unless you spent a lot of money. But there are diagonal mullions available in every window manufacturer that would at least be an homage to what the building is presently. Unfortunately, windows without mullions strips a building of character, shadow line, and it makes a building look more commercial than a residential building would. So I would strongly recommend that they include the mullions in the windows.
Can I ask the applicant if they've looked into other windows? There's a couple options that they provided for the Marvin and for the Milgard, but I don't know if they've looked at other types.
Did you guys choose windows yet?
We have looked at, we have talked to two different suppliers for windows, and one of them said the diamond grids would be about $40,000 more
For how
than,
many windows?
this is for 20?
I think you need another manufacturer. That's a ridiculous price.
It took us aback, for
Is-
sure.
Was that price to match the existing design or just a standard diagonal design that the company might have?
It was their standard diagonal design, that would be the diagonal inside 2 panes of,
You're talking about true dividers.
not true dividers,
Between the
it would
two
be
panes.
faux
They want
dividers.
$40,000 for
I know.
25 windows. I think you need to get another bid. That's a ridiculous price.
I was pretty disappointed.
Anderson windows, I think is $40 a window.
Yeah.
Times 20 windows is not $40,000.
The Anderson windows were quite a bit more expensive than the 2 other options that we looked at, the Marvin and the Milgard.
Anderson
And so I
is
think
more
it was
expensive
the
than Marvin.
addition of having to go to the Anderson plus having the grids, the diamond grids, was about $40,000, according to Southgate Glass.
Numbers don't sound right to me. I'm an architect, I've been a developer, they don't sound right.
Yeah,
I would seek more information.
it seemed pretty high.
Yeah,
Yes,
ridiculously.
yeah.
It sounds like they don't want to do it, in which case, there are other manufacturers.
Each bank of window includes 3 or 4 smaller windows. It's a kind of a combo setup. And so it's expensive to put all those individual windows in.
I've done
Yeah, maybe
projects
your labor
with,
cost is high, yeah.
I've done projects with 30 windows, and the upcharge is a couple of thousand, maybe $3,000, $4,000 for the whole building.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so
Difference.
that, something's wrong.
Yeah. Huh. You see the benefit of doing the diamond grid when they're so different than the sanctuary building?
Well, I have no problem with being different from the sanctuary building because it is a different use. The issue is, as we as a society strip our physical environment of these little nuances, these little attributes of beauty in life, we become more and more sterile. And a building without them is more sterile. It's as simple as that. It's sterile looking anyway. That's my concern. I think it affects the aesthetic quality of the building, and by nature, as an architect, I believe, that affects the emotional state of people walking by.
If I may ask for clarification, you refer to mullions, so then you're not necessarily saying, or you're not saying a diamond grid, you're saying a, let's say a pattern of 8 rectangular mullions that would create some shade and shadow patterns in the window? Am I
That's not
understanding?
what I'm saying. You can have a diagonal. I would recommend to keep the diagonal. The difference is, are they true mullions? Do they go through the window and then each pane is individual, where the mullion is on the outside and on the inside of the building? That is a very expensive proposition. There's no doubt. However, they make them in 2 different ways. One that go on the outside of the glass and some that go on the inside of the building. And they're just clipped into place. They can be removable for cleaning the glass, and they're relatively inexpensive. The true mullion, the one that goes through the glass that creates little panes of glass, that I can understand being $40,000 more. So maybe they don't understand the option that you're asking for.
Good ask. Good ask.
Chelsea, do you have any comments or questions?
No.
I'm fine with the certificate of appropriateness. The building itself has not been recognized as historic, even though it is of age to be historic. The window replacement is fine. I mean, I'm always in favor of designating the new addition as not exactly the same as the historic one, so that when future historians come, they can easily identify that this is not of the same era, right? But I understand what you're saying about the look of the windows themselves, and hope that this conversation has maybe led to some more questions that you can ask Southgate about what you're wanting to be quoted, which is the click-in things, as I would call them. So Eric, we're all fine, yes, with certificate of appropriateness?
Well, if we vote in favor of it, that means it stays as is.
No, it's that we feel as that we don't need to evaluate this build, but this building is not historic in nature and would not need to have anything besides the city staff be reviewing changes to.
Because otherwise, it would have to come to you for a public hearing item, kind of similar to the next item, so it would be noticed for your formal action on it.
Can we postpone until we get additional information about the mullions? Because that's a really odd number that we're hearing.
I'll discuss with the applicant on that, and I can check. I don't know if we'd want to put it off a month formally, or if that's something we can
They're
an
leaking,
update on.
and so we're really trying to move forward and sign a contract with Southgate or this other company. However, we're concerned about the time.
So the question to us really is not the look of the windows. The question to us is the city allowed to move forward with designating a window permit for the non-historic building, as even though it's adjacent to the historic campus. Yes, that's that vaguely.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of the report then with the pictures? If we're supposed to look at a report and read the report and look at the photographs, as a commissioner, are we supposed to then give our opinion to the government as to what is best? So I see it is my impression, the way the system works, and correct me if I'm wrong. If we vote yes, then they can just replace the windows as is without mullions. So I would be inclined to vote no, to make them at least do more due diligence to find out what the true cost of a simplified mullion system would be, as opposed to what I suspect they've been given a price for as true mullions that go through the glass. I agree with them, $40,000 is unreasonable, and I wouldn't do it either. But I suspect there isn't a meeting of the minds between the company and the client, understanding what the price is for. And therefore, I'd be inclined to vote no at this time.
I think on my part, I was here certainly open to input, and so kind of viewed your comments as input, and that's something I can work with the applicant on to get information. At that point, I guess it depends a bit on, obviously there's an additional expense, how much that is, how much is too much, or how much is...
40,000 is too much, I agree.
I think that's part of what I would want to work with them on. So I think we're trying to facilitate that, and we don't have to bring it back and wait another month for the commission, but I would certainly work with them on
So if I
getting more
were to vote
information.
yes, it can be with the proviso that you will work with them about this mullion issue and get some more information so we know that due diligence was done properly, because I suspect, like I said, I don't think there's a meeting of the minds.
And I do want to check with the applicant to make sure they're okay with investigating that further. I think you've talked to the Anderson windows already, but I think it's worth checking into,
I
a
could
little bit
ask that
more.
specific question. I really appreciate your input on that, because I'd be glad to ask that specific question as to the snapping grids on the inside.
The wording is true lights, that's what the industry understands, meaning go through the glass,
Right,
versus surface mounted.
surface mount.
I would recommend the surface mounted. I certainly wouldn't recommend spending another $40,000 on true lights for that building.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we could really work with Eric on that. I think
Okay.
that-
and I'll give you an update. Or I'll copy you also if and when we do the noticing. I'll send that to the commission as well.
Do you you want us to vote on your affirmation?
Yes, please.
Okay, do I have a motion for the affirmation that the COA may be processed administratively with more information on the surplus mounted mullions?
So moved.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So affirmed. All right, item C, 305, you guys can stick around or not. 305 East Street Historic Designation Planning Application number 24-36. We are being asked to review the information related to 305 East Street for consideration as a historical resource.
Who has the responsibility?
And
Okay.
Eric, are we holding a public hearing, or are we discussing if we're going to hold a public hearing?
You are holding a public hearing.
Okay, so I shall open a public hearing. Okay.
Is this the public hearing?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we are holding public hearing on 305 East Street. So take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So as you mentioned, this item is located at 305 East Street, but it also encompasses the adjacent properties at 503, 509, 515 3rd. Those are all properties which have been surveyed and were brought to the commission in June, I guess, as part of the 2023-2024
Have a nice week.
downtown surveys. And you know, that effort was to evaluate the properties in the downtown area as part of the downtown specific plan, and to clarify what the historic status of them were. For 503, 509, 515, those were identified as not recommended, as not eligible for designation, but there were a few properties that the consultants, ESA, identified that recommended that were eligible, one of them being this one, 305 East Street. And they recommended that it was eligible as a local merit resource, so on the local register. Subsequent to that, we received an application to redevelop that site, the new apartment project on it. And so under the city's demolition ordinance, that triggers this formal review. So even though the commission reviewed those DPR forms and accepted the analysis, there was no determination on whether they should or should not, would or would not recommend designating these sites, because typically it's only triggered when either the applicant wants to initiate designation or the city HRMC can initiate a designation too. And so effectively, if you were to recommend that the city council designate it, that's the HRMC initiating it, in part because the applicant has expressed their opposition to designating it. They're objecting to that. So what we provided to you, or staff is not necessarily making a recommendation whether you should or should not designate it. That's up to the HRMC. So if you were to recommend it, then there's an ordinance, draft ordinance that's included with the staff report, which would go forward to city council, and then they would make the ultimate decision on whether to do that or not. If the HRMC decides not to recommend it, there's not necessarily formal action you need to make, but we would want that voted on, a motion on that. And then what staff would do is just take that recommendation forward to city council for them to essentially confirm. It would be part of actually it would go along with the rest of the 2023-2024 surveys that you previously looked at. So because that was a survey effort, we'd want to bring that to council anyway, and so this would be a part of that. And then also kind of recommendation number 2 is just to confirm your previous determination on those other properties that they're not eligible, because if this project goes forward, if it's developed, those buildings will all be demolished. So we want to close the loop on those buildings as well, that you're not recommending they be designated because the surveys found them not eligible. For 305 East Street, the DPR form kind of identified it as eligible based primarily on the engineering and the design of the building. It's early 1900s, built in the early 1900s, and they've been surveyed in the past before, and those surveys are included as an attachment to your staff report. The information from the applicant and their argument that it's should not be designated, kind of addressing the design and argument that it doesn't meet that threshold. They believe that there have been modifications to the site, and so therefore they're asking it not be designated. The staff report identified, just lays out the basic process for designation, and then also the criteria to be used for designating it as a merit resource. And beyond that, that's, as I said, this is part of the processing that we're doing for the redevelopment of the site. So in the meantime, we're also reviewing the design review that's being processed. The current procedures for that is an administrative approval or administrative review, consistent with the downtown plan and the form-based code. It doesn't trigger any planning commission review, but it does require this review by the Historic Resources Commission for the demolition and for the historic determination. So I guess with that, I'll close my presentation, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk or answer any questions on the process or about the project. And then we also have representatives from the applicant here to speak as well.
Okay, do they have something prepared?
Good evening, Commissioners. Justin Zucker from Reuben Junius & Rose on behalf of the ownership of 305 East Street. We urge you to recommend not designating 305 East Street as a local historic merit resource. While we appreciate post-application designation as a merit resource doesn't impact historicity for processing of the present project application due to the protections afforded by the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, otherwise known as SB 330, we are concerned about designation should an alternative project be sought at this opportunity site identified by the Downtown Davis specific plan. The property is adjacent to the Downtown Davis specific plan's newly created Davis Square. It is one of 6 locations in the planned area requiring redevelopment with a corner element as well as storefronts. Any project proposed must include these elements, which doesn't seem possible with the existing building remaining. The city envisions this site to be redeveloped with something like the present mixed-use residential project being proposed. Retention of the existing structure isn't anticipated by the specific plan. The property has been previously analyzed and not found appropriate for historic designation. Like those previous instances, the property should not be recommended for designation as a merit resource. The sole criterion for which the property is thought to be eligible is due to its design engineering, with the period of significance being the single year 1905. Like other nearby similar properties, 305 E Street is not eligible for designation for design engineering because no specific architect, engineer, or designer is associated with the building, nor does it appear to be the work of a master architect. To be designated as a merit resource, it must be found that the property retains a high level of historic integrity. Here, that is not the case. The designation report acknowledges such, finding the property's integrity of materials is diminished. A 1996 evaluation found that the decorative wood Queen Anne features are replacements. In addition, there is a lack of integrity for design and workmanship. In 1948, the building was restructured and redesigned to place the front entrance off 3rd Street rather than E Street. The original 1905 E Street configuration doesn't exist anymore, just the street address. The wood porch with hip roof and decorative spool work is not original and were added after 1905. The property has diminished design and workmanship integrity due to the numerous and significant alterations after 1905 that have changed the property's massing and orientation, which is a critical design element of a building, especially a residence. The alterations since 1905 caused the building to lose integrity for the sole year 1905, the period of significance, and we urge you not to recommend designation. That concludes my presentation, but I'm available for any questions.
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this item? All right. Commissioners, questions, thoughts?
I have a question. Was any archaeological study done on this? There's an outhouse on the Sanborn map behind the house.
No.
And is there any geoarchaeological study for this area for possible prehistoric items below the house?
For the
People
specifics.
tended to build on higher ground, which is where people were already living. And there's a surprising lack of archaeological sites within Davis, and I'm very shocked, especially when that burial was found recently, that there are no other sites in Davis where people they couldn't all have been living on UC Davis campus. So I was wondering if
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a very good presentation. The reliance on the year 1905 is very legalese. Congratulations. However, I feel the design of the building that faces the public ways are in fact much better than the facades of the building that face the private properties. And therefore, the public experiences that building in a very different way than the property owner or the neighbors might. The facades that face the property, the public way, are interesting, have architectural character, and I believe they add a significant degree of character to the block, the intersection, and downtown. I would not like to see that building demolished. The other three buildings have gotten into such disrepair because no one's taken care of them over the last 40 years that there's very little architectural merit left to them. However, the building at the corner does have architectural merit. And just because it isn't done by a starchitect or an architect of known, or even that there's a record of the architect, does not prevent the building from being important. Most buildings on the National List of Historic Places are of architects who are unknown. That has no merit in my eyes to whether or not it's a valuable resource for the community. I believe it is a valuable resource for the community.
I've read the report, I saw the letters, I appreciated the in-depth detail. I think my main concern is that there have been numerous downtown Davis surveys, and this is the first time it's sort of been found eligible as a merit resource. So I'm curious, why they wouldn't have found it in previous surveys if it had, before it fell into maybe some disrepair. It does seem to have changed
The 305 is in terrible disrepair. It's not like the other buildings. The other buildings, some of them look like they're going to fall down. This one is in relatively good shape. I've been inside it. Yes, it needs painting.
Some of the woodwork looked less kept up to me, but that's my experience from walking by. I think the change in location of the entryway is an important detail in the historic nature of it, that was changed. It's no longer 1905. Most importantly, we tend to not, as a commission, move forward with designation against the wishes of a property owner. That's generally not been the commission's uphill battle, but we certainly have. In the recent past, we've tried to designate Childs, that insurance building, I think, on Childs Road. We moved that forth to City Council, and they disagreed with us based on the applicant's strong preference to not have a 30-day delay in demo, which actually turned into 90 days no matter what. So I was less pleased about that. So while I appreciate the applicant's want and desire to move forward with redevelopment of this parcel, we are in a housing crisis. I work in affordable housing. I personally know this. That is something, a 30-day delay to come back to say we're going to demolish it, right? It's not the end of the world. It takes too long time to get construction financing. So I'm a little bit at a crossroads of which way to go here on this particular one. I'm not convinced that there are not better examples of this type of architecture in the city of Davis that have been preserved. Designation does not mean it will never be demolished. So that is also something I consider when I'm weighing this, because we could vote to designate and it is just a meeting that we've had. So I would be in favor, I think, as I've come to say my thoughts out loud after thinking about them today, that I would vote that it should not be designated as a merit resource. I'm open to discussion.
Well, there may be other examples of that type of architecture. There aren't very many in downtown. Our downtown is going to change drastically over the next 20 years. 5, 6-story buildings right up to the street wall. It's going to look like a typical city. If we don't reserve character from our past, we will lose our character as a city. It is a fundamentally known aspect of human life that when cities reject or ignore or forget their history, they become more soulless. I'm not in favor of saving every building. There are certain buildings I am in favor of saving. This one I feel is very important. It's at the corner, it's at a very important corner of the city. And if we end up with a city plan with just 6-story buildings, you'll have more housing, but at what cost? I definitely do not believe the ends justifies the means. And saving this building does not eliminate the apartments. It takes maybe 20% of the apartments away. The city has approved hundreds of apartments recently, and we'll be approving hundreds more, many of them without parking, which is another problem this city is going to have to face, and city council will have to face it because of the errors of city planning. We shouldn't lose our soul and our history to achieve housing, because Davis is not going to solve the housing crisis of California, nor is it going to solve the housing crisis of the United States. We're a small city. Number of apartments lost to save that building is not significant.
Well, I disagree fundamentally with many things you said, but that's from my perspective as a professional in the housing field. And I think one apartment lost is a disaster, actually. So, but our main focus here is this a merit resource. Do we agree with DPR form? Do we want to move this forward against the owner's wishes?
Is there public comment?
Yes, there would be, there should be.
Oh, okay, so it's yet to come.
Well, I think I asked for public comment, but no one had any, but feel free to speak. Yes,
You did?
go ahead.
Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry I missed it. All right, so I'm Alan Miller. I live in Old East Davis. I'm not representing Old East Davis, but I suspect I am. I have fought for historic structures in this town for the last 40 years and mostly lost. Unlike Bacaville, Winters, Woodland, Davis already is a wasteland lacking in historic structures. And, you know, the ones that are lost are still there as ghosts in my memory, but they'll soon be forgotten. You know, the thing is, okay, there are indeed, as you say, other houses of that era, but not in the downtown. And the problem is that, okay, so, well, I mean, pretty much just what you said. We're down to, you know, a few structures left, and we are just going to lose our character. And I am very much in favor of high-rises. To me, this is the deal that our neighborhoods and the city struck, is that there would be high-rises in downtown, but not every square inch, I hope. And really, I mean, I'm not an expert at the process, but I've been through this many times. I am just really disappointed that this is happening now. Like, if this had happened a long time ago, like it should have, the developer would know, the public would know. Instead, we're doing it as we're facing these apartments going up. And, you know, I'm very much in favor of the other houses. I don't like benign neglect it happens, but really the other houses are much more plain. And, you know, I think this house is worth saving. And really, there's so little left to save in downtown Davis. I really, you know, this might be one of the very last few things left. And I think it's worth saving. I wish, you know, the developer well in, you know, the rest of the project, and but I hope that this house is preserved. But you know, we know how the city feels, and I'm pretty sure, like with all the others, you know, this is going to be lost too, because not only did the city fail to deal with this earlier or when they're doing the downtown plan, but the city is probably eliminating you. So we know how the city feels. So I'm just here because I have to speak my piece and speak on behalf of the remaining houses. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there a way that, because I do like this house, is there a way to move it to the other end of the block once everything's removed, where the other house, like there's the other street that has houses there. So if this house was moved just to the other end of the 3rd Street block, then this corner could retain the banks and the other buildings there and the high rise, and then the house could stay at the other end of the block with the other houses that are not on this block. Does that make sense? Is there a way we can do that?
No, well, we would have to, well, no, there's nothing that we can mandate that. They could decide to mitigate the impacts of demolishing historic resource by moving the building to an adjacent corner of their parcel. I assume the entire piece will be the new development. I will say I don't think it is a high-rise, it's probably a mid-rise, which is wood frame on top of concrete podium, which is not considered a high-rise construction, just to be technical. So downtown Davis will not be high-rises, will be mid-rises, which are up to 8 stories. But that's a technical point. I think liking a building is lovely. I don't know that it is historically significant, is my main point, but.
Was cumulative impact done on this property to see other Queen Anne's? So I don't think there are very many in town.
Yes, ma'am.
Justin Zucker again. During the downtown Davis specific plan, there was an evaluation of the historic resources within the plan. The plan deferred analysis of the of parcel sites that hadn't been designated as historic. So as it stands, the property is not designated a historic resource, and the other properties at the time were not designated a historic resource. So I would not think that they could have been analyzed as a cumulative impact analysis. However, the project as proposed, as mentioned, takes up the full lot span along East Street, 3rd Street that is. There isn't an option to relocate it due to that, the proposed project itself. And then with regards to the CEQA aspect of it and mitigation of it is, the project is eligible to tier off of the downtown Davis specific plan, so there wouldn't be a need to do further archaeological or paleontological analysis because of that. And so with that tiering, we're moving forward, the project moves forward under the downtown Davis specific plan.
I disagree with that, but that's because I disagree with the downtown plan, that there was no archaeology done, so I had a problem
Or
with that from the
historic
beginning.
resource opinions added to it, but yes. That's also a whole
That was only
conversation for yesterday, yes. Today, though, we are faced with this. I did read somewhere in here that this was considered in 2015 that the subject property concurs with earlier evaluations that identified 305 East Street as maybe eligible for listing on the California Register as part of a multiple property district composed of a small number of Victorian houses for Davis. So it didn't say it was eligible on its own though, only as part of a district.
Right, I think that was used in a couple different areas where they, while the individual property, individual buildings or sites were not deemed eligible. and
They
there's
itself were not
few-
historically important, but as a whole, if you had a district, then they would,
Maybe there was, yeah, that could be something.
yes, there would be enough raisins in the raisin bread, to quote Rand, so. Does anyone want to make a motion for either of these things that we have in front of us, which is a recommendation or a not recommendation?
I move that we make the recommendation that 305 is the number,
Yes.
305.
be designated.
As a merit resource?
Yes.
Okay,
I want to second that.
okay. Eric, do you have any other comments before we vote?
No, whatever the commission recommends, we'll move forward to city council for their final decision on it. As I said, that did include an ordinance that, I guess, that could be used to designate a property. As Aaron said, in the past, the city's been careful or has generally not designated sites where the applicant or the owners been opposed to, but again, the HRMC is able to initiate the designation. So.
So the draft ordinance in here would be the ordinance you
That's
give to
one
the city?
right.
Okay, as part of this hearing, we looked at it and said, yes, that's what it looks like, okay. All right, we have a motion, I'll have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Motion carries. So we have recommended city council introduction to the ordinance designated 35 East Street as a merit resource. You also would like us to do something else, which is confirm that the HRMC's previous acceptance of the historical evaluations and determinations for 503, 509, and 515 3rd Street as ineligible for designation. Do we want a discussion on that confirmation? Yes?
Well, I'd like to say two things. One is, I disagree with our speaker who referred to them, the citizen speaker who referred to them as benign neglect. I see them as malicious neglect. There are cities in this country that have passed laws that say, once a property is designated, it is a criminal offense for the owner to let it fall into more disrepair than it was at the time it was designated. So it's clear to me in the time that I've been here in Davis that those buildings were specifically let to go into the ground. So
I
Other
withdraw
than that-
mine and agree with you.
other than that, I do agree that these buildings have very little character left on them and are in such disrepair that I don't see saving them without an enormous amount of capital investment is worthwhile.
Okay. Do you want to confirm our previous acceptance or disconfirm, unconfirm? Our previous acceptance of the historical evaluations?
I'll move to confirm.
Move to confirm, any seconds?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, thank you all for attending our public hearing on this. We do not have any subcommittee or liaison assignment updates because our ad hoc subcommittee on the WPA markings are not in attendance. So, anything else, Eric, besides a meeting next month, potentially?
I am expecting that we'll schedule the meeting next month.
Okay.
We,
Do you want to propose a date?
yeah, it would be September 16th. So that is the third Monday. And in part because we've been processing an application for Chipotle, where
Oh, yes.
Cindy's restaurant
The Cindy's
is located.
restaurant, yes.
Cindy's on
In South Davis,
the
next to the
4823
freeway,
Child, yeah, right at the
next to the Taco
intersection.
Bell.
Yeah, next to the Taco Bell. It was built in 1970, or finished construction in 1973. It's 51 years old. It would involve demolition of that building. And so,
For the record, 51 is not old.
no, I'm more than
No,
51.
it's historic, no. It is historic.
So, and Anyway, so Dana Superno prepared a report that will
Okay.
be presented to you for your review.
We will be doing a demolition?
Demolition.
Okay.
So we expect to bring that to you in September.
And was there a lot of public opposition to this?
We received a couple comments
Okay.
about the demolition, so we thought
Okay.
this was, we wanted to bring to you, and this was needed to be done.
Close is the nearest residence.
I think they're apartments. Apartments, yeah, like off of Elsamont, not Elsamont, it was Cowell, so that's at least like 1,000 feet maybe, or back of the apartments there.
Yeah. There's quite a bit of space in there.
It's the car dealerships.
Yeah, across the Valero, and then, you know, that would we expect for next week. So that's all I have for you.
Okay. Anything else?
I'm in favor of WP markers, WPA markers.
You can do the GoFundMe. That's what they need.
I got one in front of my house.
You have a marking on the sidewalk?
Oh.
Okay, great.
And I've been looking out for them whenever I see construction, make sure that crews don't wipe them out.
So that wouldn't have been included in the, they did a walking part of Old Davis.
Yeah.
But not east.
Not
Old east.
Old East, no. If you want to connect with the
Karen Moore.
subcommittee, yeah,
Subcommittee.
and Karen Moore.
Moore.
Karen Moore, she has done quite a bit of research on Old North WPA markings, and we have a lot of information on those, so if you have.
Resident?
Yes,
you're saying?
residential
Okay.
on
Yeah.
the, and we're trying to work with the Public Works to save those. Through, I don't know how, but we are trying our best to get them to recognize them and not just cut them up if there's a way around that.
Mhm.
So, it would be great to have Old East included in there as well though, because I did not know that.
I just passed a sidewalk in the days that had the date 1913 imprinted in it, very much like the WPA imprints.
Yes, she had a whole WPA and sidewalk markings sort of report that we heard maybe in the winter time,
A
I
couple
would say,
months back, yeah.
February-ish, March. It's been a long year. Okay. Well, I was gonna adjourn at 7:57, but now it's 7:58, I'll adjourn. Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay,